Maybe it is what you think it is. Anyway, James chapter 4 is where we are. Pride Month is the sermon. Last week we talked a lot about self-control, or the lack of self-control being a catalyst for our sin, if you will. This week we're going to dive into what I feel like is most often at the very core of our sin. We got the month of June is dedicated or deemed, if you will, Pride Month, and the more I think about it, the more it seems appropriate. Pride Month is the opportunity for the world, if you will, to celebrate the LGBTQ community and whatever accomplishments that they boast. And it's hard, as a Christian, to talk about a lot of that without getting into passing judgment and things like that. But, quite frankly, I've really never had the slightest desire to celebrate Pride Month at all until now. And now I do have a reason and a desire, if you will, to celebrate it. And so starting next year, I've decided that I'm going to celebrate Pride Month for the rest of my earthly life. I'm going to celebrate it. Full swing. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that month-long celebration could not have been better titled. And you think about it, guys. Pride Month is an entire month dedicated to celebrating the homosexual lifestyle, right? I mean, that's what it's all about. You can't miss it on the TV. You can't miss it on the shelves of your stores that you go to. You can't miss it driving down the street. Well, last week we talked about how that lack of self-control causes us to wade through like sinful decisions and actions, right? And when we couple that with our selfish pride, we do things like burn in lust for unnatural and ungodly things in life. That's one of there's so many arguments out there, if you will, about what is said in the Bible or not said in the Bible about homosexuality, whether it's right, wrong, or whatever. Trying to so you go and you don't have to go to this. I'll read it to you. Romans 1, starting at 24, says, "So God abandoned them to do whatever sinful things their hearts desire. As a result, they did vile and degrading things with each other's bodies. They traded the truth about God for a lie, so they worshipped and served things God created instead of the Creator Himself, who that is so common, by the way, who is worthy of eternal praise." Amen. That is why God abandoned them to their shameful desires. Even the women turned against the natural way to have sex and instead indulged in sex with each other. And the men, instead of having normal sexual relations with women, burned with lust for each other. Men did shameful things with other men, and as a result of this sin, they suffered within themselves the penalty they deserved. And I'll stop right there. But that's what we're celebrating, man. In the Pride Month there, that's what we celebrate. So here's the thing is, when we talk about like that selfish pride, if you will, that's when we look at how you wonder why. You think, why is it that people go that route and things like that, right? Well, it's not that we don't have enough self-control to turn away from something wrong a lot of times, because a lot of times we do have that self-control, but it's all too often that we have so much pride in ourselves that we think we deserve to lose control and just follow our desires rather than God's desires. And that's what pride will do. Like we feel like we deserve something that we don't deserve. Now, the pride that has led to so many people doing like unnatural things with one another has led to them wanting to poison our kids' minds with this filth. You've seen the controversies, I'm sure, about the public library things or whatever, and the transgender movement coming and wanting to read transgender books to kids and all that, but yet then Christian books come out. Kirk Cameron was shut down, I don't know how many times, with his new book in public libraries, you know, and then when he did get to go, it was him and I can't remember which one of the Robertsons it was. One of the wives of Robertsons both had a book debuting, and they were treated very poorly. That being said, I'm going to celebrate the month. I'm going to celebrate it also because I think it's an opportunity to celebrate my pride in my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. I think we can flip it upside down. We can drop it on its head. I'm going to wave his version of a rainbow flag. I'm going to wave it high, man, so I can remind people that the rainbow is about a promise and not about pride. Right? I think we can celebrate that. I think that we should celebrate that. I think that they want to take what was made for promise and turn it into pride, so we can take their Pride Month and take what they have for pride and turn it into promise. I'm going to celebrate it. And don't get me wrong now. My intentions are not to be ugly to anybody about their lifestyle. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be ugly to people. I'm not going to judge people. I can't stand, you know, that church out in Kansas or wherever it is years ago, and I haven't heard anything about them in a while, but they were like emphatic about the fact that homosexuals should die. I mean, that was what they were telling. This is a modern day Baptist church telling people that because they chose to be homosexual, that they should die. Well, I think they've got things twisted, and they haven't read in here what it says about God's grace and about sin and everything that's sin in our own lives. I don't agree with any of that. I don't think that we should. I mean, I'm around people that are gay. I'm not going to treat people poorly because that's the lifestyle that they chose. I'm just not going to. I'm not going to tell them it's right because it's not right. People say, well, Christ never spoke directly on the matter. Well, you're wrong. He did, because he said that marriage is between one man and one woman. But nonetheless, I don't hate people that have chosen to live a homosexual lifestyle, but I refuse to celebrate their sin. I'm also not going to celebrate an alcoholic's lifestyle or an adulterer's lifestyle or a liar's lifestyle or a thief's lifestyle or any other sin. I'm not going to. You can put a month out there to celebrate all of these wrongs. I'm not going to celebrate that. But I am going to celebrate pride. The right kind of pride. James 4. I'm going to start with verse 1. James 4, verse 1. You found your place, say God is good?
God is good.
All the time.
All the time.
God is good. Amen. James 4, verse 1. What is causing the quarrels and fights among you? Don't they come from the evil desires at war within you? You want what you don't have, so you scheme and kill to get it. You are jealous of what others have, but you can't get it, so you fight and wage war to take it away from them. Yet you don't have what you want because you don't ask God for it. And even when you ask, you don't get it because your motives are all wrong. You want only what will give you pleasure. You adulterers, don't you realize that friendship with the world makes you an enemy of God? I say it again, if you want to be a friend of the world, you make yourself an enemy of God. Do you think the scriptures have no meaning when they say that the spirit God placed within us is filled with envy? And he gives us grace generously. As the scriptures say, God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. This is a tough message for me to preach, right? Because I've been a prideful person most of my life. And I've struggled with that. I've struggled with allowing attention to be given to something other than my accomplishments. Well, that can be really dangerous. I've figured that out over the years. But James here, he gave us a truckload of wisdom, if you will, in this passage. And within it, we can answer a lot of questions about Pride Month and most other sins that are celebrated throughout the world. See, we have a month that is given to celebrate homosexuality and that lifestyle. But honestly, if you watch TV and you see the commercials and you see the way that things are glorified in getting drunk and partying and all that, we spend an entire year. We spend an entire year celebrating those type sins as well. Notice what James wrote right off the bat in verse 1. He says, "What is causing the quarrels and fights among you?" And then he turns around and kind of answers that with another question. He says, "Don't they come from the evil desires at war within you?" Where is it saying it's coming from? Within you. Within you. Your pride. What you have stored up inside of you that tells you that you deserve something. When he refers to the evil desires within us, he's referring to that pride. That is the place that pride starts. I know when I was running around and partying and fighting and chasing women and all those things, it was because I felt like I deserved those things. Man, I worked hard this week. I've earned the right to go get drunk this weekend and act a fool. And the fact that for some reason or another, I felt like I deserved something that this dude had or whatever, and so I was willing to fight him about it. Got me beat up a lot. I was a slow learner. But I'm just saying, I felt like I deserved that. Studies have shown that same trait has been found amongst serial rapists and serial killers. Isn't that crazy? The same thing that builds up in me and makes me feel like that I have a right to something that I don't, or that I deserve something that I don't, that's the same trait that exists within serial rapists and killers. They have a desire that makes them want to do these heinous things, and a pride that tells them that they deserve to do what brings them that pleasure. And as sick and twisted as that is, and wicked, that is their pride telling them they deserve that. That's why most people who fall into that category of rapists and killers, in the serial aspect of it, that's why it's like they do one time, they do that, right? And it feeds that pride. Well, then once it feeds that pride, then they feel like they deserve it even more. And then oh man, this is it. I'm gaining all this pleasure from this, no matter what kind of harm it's doing to somebody else. And my pride tells me that I can keep feeding that. When we take an honest look at the things that we do outside of God's will, we can almost always see our pride in that picture. Guys, a lot of people don't like to talk about pride because we all seem to be proud of our accomplishments and proud of ourselves and whatever it may be. I mean, I know people who invest hours and hundreds and thousands of dollars in their body. Various things, various ways that they do, right? We've heard 1,000,000 times over about keeping up with the Joneses. Well, where do you think that comes from? It comes from pride. When Billy Bob across the street goes and gets him a new truck and puts a bunch of goodies on it or whatever, my pride tells me, right, if he has that, then I deserve to have the same or more. So I'm going to go buy me a new truck. And I'm going to put all these goodies on it. And I'm going to have him walking across the street being like, oh, I want to put that on my truck. Back and forth, back and forth. Now, you got a couple of geniuses out just throwing money into a truck just because their pride tells them that they deserve that. Why in the world would that be a sin, you think? Why is that? I mean, they're just doing something nice for their truck. They like their vehicle or whatever. I'm not busting on anybody for doing something nice to the vehicle. I mean, I like nice wheels and all that stuff as well. Here's the thing that you have to ask, though. Are we doing that to honor God, or are we doing that to please ourselves? And it's not just about your car. That's about anything you do in life. That's usually a pretty good indication at that point of whether you're doing something that is prideful, that means something to you, because you want to allow people to, or people to be able to see you in that light. You know, I mentioned people investing all this money and time or whatever in their bodies. Christy and I recently started going to the gym again. But it's different for me this time. I used to go to the gym for all the wrong reasons, right? I would go because I could feed my pride that way. I could feed my pride by staying strong and by staying fit and all this stuff, right? And me and a buddy of mine used to work out like fiends when I first came home from the Marine Corps. I mean, and my addiction was getting stronger. I just wanted to be stronger and stronger. And it was crazy, like, and I'll tell you how stupid you are in some of these thoughts. Like, I played what I call old man baseball. It was slow pitch softball. You know, we played these tournaments, and I was on like 3 different teams and all this stuff. But, you know, I would hit that gym as hard as I could hit it, because softball is different. Old man softball anyway, slow pitch softball, it takes raw strength to hit the ball a long way. Now, fast pitch stuff and baseball is a little bit different. You got bat speed and all that stuff comes into it. But it's pretty well raw strength. And that was what I just kept hitting home runs. And I was like, look at me. I'm doing that because I can bench this amount of weight. I'm doing that because I'm this and that. And like I fed off of that, man. I just wanted to go get stronger and stronger and stronger. And now my shoulders are shot because of stupidity. To the point that I contemplated using steroids at the time. And the only reason I didn't is because I couldn't afford them. And God knows that somebody that's got the anger issues I got didn't need that anyway. But I was going to do it because my pride. Why do people stick needles in their body full of anabolic steroids to build their muscles and all that stuff? They're not doing that to honor God. They're doing that to honor themselves. Hey, look at me. Look how big I've gotten. Look how strong I've gotten. It's pride, man. Now, I really enjoy going with my wife. I told her this morning, I was like, we couldn't have done this however many years ago because we tried it. And well, I was a jerk. So, you know, Christy was new to the gym, and I was just like, I would get impatient. And I'd be like, you're not doing that right. Stop, you know, and all this stuff. But now, like, I enjoy teaching her things on, you know, how to do it. And you know, I've gotten fat and bald now, so ain't nobody paying attention to me. You know, so I'm like, no, look, here, let's just try it this way. And I'll adjust the machine for her and all this stuff. And, you know, and we go to that judgment-free zone. You know, we're up there at the Purple People Eaters. I like it. You know, so, you know, there ain't a bunch of like meatheads up there like Kevin, you know, lifting and all that stuff. I say that, he goes there now. I think it's funny. But anyway, I could care less about looking a certain way or anything like that. I just want to like maintain some sort of fitness for health reasons, really, more than anything. But anyway, James, though, even shows us how our pride can affect our prayer life. All right, read verse 4 there again, or let me read it to you. You adulterers, he says, don't you realize that friendship with the world makes you an enemy of God? I say it again, if you want to be a friend of the world, you make yourself an enemy of God. Now, verse 5, oh no, wait a minute, I'm sorry. I got the wrong verse there. Let's go to verse 3. or 2 and 3, there at the end of 2, it says, yet you don't have what you want because you don't ask God for it. And then verse 3 says, and even when you ask, you don't get it because your motives are all wrong. You want only what will give you pleasure. You can bring your pride into your prayer life. If you spend more time praying for things that you want in life or what you feel like you need than you do honoring God in that prayer or praying for other people's needs, that's probably a prideful thing. I said probably because I don't know, I can't read your mind, your hearts, right? But we have to take our prayer time seriously, and the fact that we need to spend, and I'll tell you, I spend probably the first X amount of time, a pretty good while in my prayer, and this ain't about me, but I'm just telling you, just honoring God. Like, I know that he knows he's awesome, but I want to make sure that he knows that I know that he's awesome, and I want to acknowledge that. And I thank him for that. And I thank him for his grace and his mercy and his love. And I just want to lift his name up, and I just want to honor him and glorify him. And that's like I get excited to pray that. But I've learned by reading things like this that, you know what? Because I found myself in that place before I really understood what prayer was about. I asked God to give me the things I wanted more than the things I needed. And I spent a lot of time praying about me instead of praying about those around me that I know have a need or anything like that. It's my pride. Oh, I'm a sick, disgusting, prideful person. You know what I mean? I feel that way so many times, and I'll get into that here in a minute. But I want to look at this reference real quick in verse 4. That's where I was going with that, where he says, you adulterers. Like in today's time, people take that out of context and then and offensively. And it should be offensive to you, but not for the reason that you think. He is not calling you like a true adulterer as far as you are stepping outside of your marriage. That's not what he's saying. He's referencing the Old Testament. God oftentimes referred to the children of Israel as adulterers and adulteresses because they chased after the world. They chased after pagan gods and things like that. So it's really just an illustration of them chasing false gods and doing, just like when they had Aaron make the golden calf so that they could worship because Moses was on the mountain too long and they felt like he had abandoned them. They said, well, we need something to worship. That's what he was referring to. And really, if we get outside of God's will, we're still being adulterers and adulteresses in that manner because Jesus Christ is our bridegroom and we are his bride. We have to understand that. So what he was telling James, or what James was telling his audience there, is that your friendship with the world makes you an enemy of God. So we dive into the world so much, and a lot of that, again, is our pride telling us that we deserve these things. When we overspend, when we overeat, when we do all these things, it's your pride telling you that you deserve that. You think, oh, no, man, I got a problem with food, right? I don't really have a problem with food. I got a problem with my pride saying, it's not going to hurt. Yeah, I went and spent however much time in the gym working out, but it's not going to hurt me to eat 12 Little Debbie's a day. I'm trying, man. She's got a grip on me. But until we realize that the only thing that we truly deserve, now you think about this. What do you deserve? Think about it. What do you deserve? And you think about it, I deserve, what do you deserve? You want me to tell you what you deserve? Death, hell, and the grave. That's what you deserve. But we don't seem to see it that way. We don't realize it that way. But that's what we deserve. But because of the grace of God and Jesus Christ, we don't have to endure death, hell, and the grave. The fact of the matter is pride is like throwing gasoline on the fire, guys. See, we have a sinful nature as it is, right? Well, when we let our pride rise to the surface of everything, it just makes a bad situation worse. I mean, it's literally like taking a wildfire, and instead of doing the things that the control burns around it or whatever to stop it, it's like we just open the gates. We keep throwing more gasoline out there for it to keep spreading. So I can look back at so many things in my life and see where pride has caused me to give God grief. Like I know that I've grieved his spirit. I don't like it, right? But I just know that I have, and I know that I still do, right? I've struggled with pride most of my life because I've spent most of my life yearning for people to recognize me and my accomplishments. And I don't know where that comes from. I'm not a psychologist. I can't dig into all that. And I'm sure it's something to do with my childhood being jacked up, my dad being all loving and everything, deciding to pack his bags and leave. No, I'm sure, right? I don't know. Really, that's an excuse. It's a crutch to lean on. But really, I'm just a prideful person, I believe is what it boils down to, right? And so I spent a lot of time, and I still struggle with that, right? For people wanting to acknowledge my accomplishments, which are nothing. It hadn't been until the last 10 years or so, really, that I've even tried to curtail that and do anything about it and start trying to put the focus more on God. I mean, if you think I'm bad now, you should have known me back then. Because I was really bad. And unfortunately, I have this ultra competitive nature about me. Like I'm like super competitive. And I find myself in competitive settings being boastful and pretty much obnoxious. I know what he's thinking right now. He ain't saying nothing, but I know what he's saying. I know what he's thinking right now. This literally happened yesterday. Throwing horseshoes. Like afterwards, I'm just like, I was on my own nerves, and I'm like giving him down the road about throwing some horseshoes or whatever, and you know what that comes from? Pride. For real. That's what it comes from. And so there's so many other things I could tell you in my life that come from pride. But then I realized that later, right, I look back on it and I'm like, just like yesterday. And then it risks my heart out. It really does, because then I'm thinking about the fact that I'm still so shallow. I am so shallow that I seek to feed my pride rather than seeking to glorify God. I mean, as a man of God, that's pretty shallow, man. It really is. And it's hurtful when you look back on it and see it and you think, man, you know what I just did was shed not a good light on my God. Not at all. So in closing, I will throw this out there. There's nothing wrong with being proud of things, okay? Don't take what I'm saying as that. But here's the difference. It's the who that we acknowledge in our pride that matters. See, we forget so much about the who in so many things. If you talk about going to heaven, oh, when I get to heaven, it's going to be streets of gold. I got me a mansion waiting up there, whatever. It's not about the what. It's about the who. It's who's waiting on you there, not what's waiting on you there. And we got to understand that. Nebuchadnezzar was reminded swiftly, right, that he was not the one that accomplished all the things that he felt like he did. When he walked about and he looked down over Babylon and he was like, look at all the things that I've done. Look at this city that I've built, this kingdom that I've built. When God quickly sent him out to the fields to live like an animal and eat grass and do all these things. And he spent some years out there. It wasn't like he was just out there a couple of days. And then God brought him back and he forgave him, right? That brother ended up he was like a cow, essentially. But James goes on in verses 7 and 8 to give us some sound advice on how to point the attention in the right direction. I'll read those two verses. Verse 7 says, "So humble yourselves before God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Come close to God, and God will come close to you. Wash your hands, you sinners, purify your hearts, for your loyalty is divided between God and the world." You think about it, guys, we talk all the time. I hear Christians and church folks saying all the time, and you notice how I separate those two, because Christians and church folks are not always the same. There's a lot of people that sit in the church and they're church folks, but there's also a lot of church folks that are not Christians because they've never actually taken that step. But anyway, that's a whole nother, I'd preach you another sermon on that one. But nonetheless, I hear people say all the time when they talk about their relationship with God and everything, they're like, man, I just can't seem to get, I want to have that relationship that such and such has, or whatever. You know what that is? Pride. But here's what it boils down to, okay? We simply need to follow verse 8. We need to come close to God and realize that God will come close to us. King James Version, I think, says, draw nigh to God and he will draw nigh to you. You know, it just depends on what words you want to use, I guess. So here we go. Next June, I'm celebrating Pride Month. Anybody care to join me? Bow your head and close your eyes.